And we were talking about the winners and losers in the tax bill, which is pretty breathtaking, extremely breathtaking, actually. The big winners: President Trump and his family, number one, and anyone else who is a real estate developer worth more than $100 million. Big corporations that get to bring in $3 trillion of offshore money at an 8% tax rate and will never have to pay that tax again. Multimillionaire children who are set to inherit, never having to work for that money, you know, the Paris Hiltons of the world. Private equity managers, this is an amazing thing, carried interest. Back, tip of the hat to Stephanie Rule at MSNBC. I learned this from her this morning. I'm not sure where she got it, and I probably should have seen it there, but I didn't know the history of carried interest. Back in the 1600s, the Dutch trading companies, which were imitated, by the way, with the East India Company in December of 1801, when Queen Elizabeth I signed the charter for the East India Company. I didn't get this from Stephanie Rule. This is stuff I've known for years. But in 1601, when Queen Elizabeth started the East India Company, it was in an attempt to imitate what the Dutch were doing. And the way the Dutch had set up their trading corporations was if a captain was bringing your cargo from Rotterdam to London, for example, the captain charged 20% of the value of the cargo to do that, to carry the things that you are interested in to their destination. You could argue that those captains were, in a way, kind of pirates. So when Mitt Romney's industry got invented, they said, okay, we're going to carry the assets and debt of a company into another company, so we get to skim 20% off the top and call it carried interest. And we're going to buy some legislators who are going to write a tax provision that says we only have to pay 20% income tax on this rather than the 39% that everybody else pays. So you literally have people on Wall Street who are making $1 billion or $2 billion a year. There was a dozen of them last year who made over $1 billion a year. And they're paying a maximum income tax rate of 20% on it because of this so-called carried interest thing, which is just, the reinvention of something from the 16th century. It's bizarre. Who else is going to win as a result of this so-called tax scam, or the so-called tax bill? Private schools and the people who can afford them. It used to be that you could set aside, up to $10,000 a year in your 529, this is one of these new tax-deferred programs, in order to pay for your kids' college, or your own college for that matter. Now you can use those 529s to pay for private schools and religious schools, primary schools. So if you want to send your kid to a Jesuit school, or you want to send your kid to a Scientology school, or you want to send your kid to a Muslim school, don't tell Donald Trump, you get up to $10,000 a year that you can cut off your taxes for doing that. Senator Rob Portman of Ohio made sure that the liquor business gets a healthy tax cut. The new addition to the pass-through provision, it's not just going to be for real estate people. They had to expand it a little bit because, the president is a real estate guy. You've got to give this to a few more people. And so they expanded it to engineers and architects. So if you're in the real estate business and you own your own company, you got a sweet little tax scam. If you're in the accounting business and you own your own company, you get a sweet little tax scam. And maybe this is to keep CPAs from telling us the truth about what's really in the tax bill. And if you're an architect, well, that's kind of tied to the construction business. You get a sweet little tax scam. And tax accountants and lawyers, of course, are going to make out like bandits because this is not reducing the complexity of the tax laws. This is radically increasing the complexity of the tax laws. Now, who are the losers? According to the New York Times, according to this piece put together by Jesse Drucker and Alan Rappaport, anybody who wants to buy health insurance, you're going to see your prices go up because they're doing away with certain Obamacare subsidies. And well, specifically, they're doing away with the individual mandate, which means that healthier people are going to drop their health insurance. Why pay for it when the odds are you're not going to get sick? And when healthy people drop their health insurance, all the rest of us have to pay a little more for it because not everybody is 25 years old and indestructible. The elderly are going to get whacked pretty severely. The biggest way that the elderly are going to get whacked under this bill, under this GOP tax scam, is that it's going to kick in the automatic pay-go/sequestration cuts. The automatic cuts are going to kick in starting right after the first of the year if this legislation is signed by the president. And that's going to mean a 4% cut every year for the next 10 years into Medicare. Now, the last time Medicare was cut by 4% as a result of sequestration was 2013. And immediately Medicare stopped paying for expensive chemotherapy. Expect that to happen again. If you're over 65, you're on Medicare, and you get cancer, the Republicans, literally, their new tax bill is what Alan Grayson laid out on the floor of the House of Representatives last year. The new Republican health bill, number one, don't get sick. Number two, if you do get sick, die quick. That's it, right? That's the Republican tax bill. And the people who also are getting hurt under this, low-income families. The low-income families who claim the earned income tax credit will lose out on $19 billion over the next decade. Why? Because increases in the rate of taxation are no longer tied to the rate of inflation. This is a really slick trick that the Republicans have put together. They're tying taxation, excuse me, they're tying the rate, your increase in income taxes no longer to the rate of inflation, but instead to a chained CPI. Now, a chained CPI means that the consumer price index, the CPI, is chained to behavior. So if the government determines that beef has gotten so expensive that people are moving to chicken, say beef went from $1 a pound to $2 a pound, and chicken's only 50 cents a pound, so everybody moves to chicken. And I realize those numbers are nonsense, but I haven't bought beef or chicken since I was 16 years old. I have no idea what they cost. But in any case, let's just use those for example. If beef got more expensive under a chained CPI, rather than saying, gee, beef just went from $1 a pound to $2 a pound, there's a 100% increase in the price of beef, and that's, say, 5% of the total cost of food, so we're going to have a 2.5% increase in our food costs. Instead of saying, oh, inflation just went up 2.5%, what they're going to say instead is, oh, people are going to stop eating beef and start eating chicken, and chicken is less expensive than beef, so the inflation rate actually went down. So since the inflation rate went down, your tax bracket is not going to go up. Although your wages may go up because actual inflation is going up. And as your wages go up along with inflation, you're not earning any extra buying power, but your tax rate will go up even faster. In other words, you will move into higher tax brackets very rapidly if you make less than $150,000 a year, especially if you make less than $90,000 a year. You're going to see over the next 10 years a loss of $19 billion total, just because of the way they calculated the CPI. Why'd they calculate the CPI that way? Because they want to give $19 billion to the Koch network and the other billionaires that have paid their way. Other people getting hurt, people in high property tax states, people in high income tax states, New Jersey, New York, California, Oregon, and Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is going to get hit really, really badly. There's a 12.5% tax on intellectual property coming in from foreign countries. And this new tax bill, Puerto Rico said, hey, you know, give us an exemption. Consider us part of the United States. We're all American citizens after all, and we're a U.S. territory. Congress, the Republicans in Congress said, nah, not going to do that. Sorry, Charlie. You're going to have to pay tax. You know, companies in Puerto Rico are going to have to pay taxes as if they were operating overseas. Which means that the few remaining businesses, American businesses in Puerto Rico, in all probability, are fixing to leave. You know, they're going to say, you know, enough of this nonsense. And finally, the Internal Revenue Service, the last of the losers. Remember Donald Trump saying, you know, we're going to get your income tax down to where it's on a postcard. We're going to do it the way they do it in Norway or the way they do it in Japan, where the government calculates your tax. And it's really simple. And you know, the tax code in Japan is only a few hundred pages. Tax code in the United States is what, 75,000 pages or something like that. It's massive. Why? Because in Japan it's illegal to buy a politician and have them write legislation for you. In Germany, it's illegal to buy a politician and have them write legislation for you. In Finland and Norway and Denmark, it's illegal to buy a politician and have them write tax legislation for you. Here in the United States, our Supreme Court has decided that if you're rich and you buy a politician, you're simply exercising your First Amendment right to free speech. That's it. It's that simple. You're just exercising your First Amendment right to free speech in buying a politician and having them write a tax code that guarantees that you can give your money to your kids without their earning it and without them paying any taxes on it. You know, this is nuts. This is just plain old flat out nuts. And this is just the obvious stuff, right? I mean, we are just beginning to dig into this 1,000-page piece of legislation written almost entirely by lobbyists.